you have kids Zoom aged, or did you just watch this? Oh, Zoom was. I can't say anything.
Or two for some more participants to join us, and we'll get started. Thank you. Hey, good evening. This is Jason Meyer from the Mizzou Alumni Association. Welcome to tonight's webinar. We're excited to welcome you to 2020 and our continued series focused on engaging the 1,200 plus Mizzou Tigers who provide volunteer service to the University of Missouri. Just some quick housekeeping off the top. Our call is muted presently, but we're going to toggle on the audio in a little bit to provide some opportunity for some engagement or questions and comments. So if you're in a noisy place, please keep that in mind and mute your side of the line. But right now, your side is muted, so that you'll just hear the presenters. You're also invited to use the chat function as a way to engage at any point, and we'll do our best to answer those questions and the ideas that you have to share. We're planning to spend about 30 minutes together tonight, and this call is being recorded so that it can be added to an online library of webinars and a reference for volunteers to listen at their later convenience. So that's our roadmap for tonight. And with that, we're going to unmute the line. And specifically, I'd like to invite Joe Valenciano, who is from the MAA Governing Board and a current chair of our Diversity and Inclusion Committee, to introduce our webinar presenter. Joe, are you with us?
Yes, Jason, I'm here.
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. On behalf of the Mizzou Alumni Association Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I am pleased to welcome everyone this evening, and want to begin by thanking you and the time for all your time and talent, for your dedication to the Mizzou alumni leaders. And this is, again, an opportunity for us to do great things, and I appreciate that this opportunity for us to do that. And the MAA, Diversity Inclusion Committee, has had the goal of offering additional training opportunities for our volunteers and network, and aim to enhancing our emphasis on diversity and inclusion for quite some time. And we're excited for this program which we have offered tonight. This training is especially due to the opportunity for us to deliver something that is special to the Mizzou Alumni Association. And for that delivery of that opportunity is Titus Blackman. He's a former chapter leader of our past president, or is our past president of the Mizzou Alumni Association Governing Board. And he has served on the Jefferson Club Board of Trustees, and he's a champion cabinet of, in addition to numerous other volunteer roles at the MU Association. But last year, he took on the new challenge and has joined the staff as the Senior Director of Advancement for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. Titus, we're excited to have you here, and we look forward to for all the things that you have an opportunity for us to produce, opportunity for us, and I hope you have some great things to provide for us this evening, and look forward to hearing more from you. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Very kind words. Always enjoy our chats. So this evening, we're here to talk about maximizing Mizzou participation. And this is a topic that is sort of near and dear to me, not just because of my current role with Mizzou, but because my involvement with Mizzou began in a local chapter in Topeka, Kansas. And, essentially I did, the engagement activities for our chapter, and then later became president of that chapter before being part of the National Board of the Alumni Association. Well, that chapter, we basically founded that chapter. And if you're trying to grow the chapter, you do it with, obviously, camaraderie and, Mizzou memories, that sort of thing. But it is completely about including as many folks as you can, right? Because that's when it's more fun, the more folks you get to attend your events. And it included, doing a variety of events as well. And so the inclusion part becomes like a big deal. And that's why doing this is a wonderful opportunity for me to get a chance to visit with those of you on the call, as well as those of us in this room. By the way, Jason Meyer introduced himself. I don't know if he said his title. He's King of the World.
Something like that. Certain days of the week, but
Yeah, that's right.
I enjoy working on the team that focuses on alumni engagement for the Mizzou Alumni Association. Also joined by my colleague Molly Landers, who also works on the alumni engagement team for Mizzou.
Yeah, so what I thought we would do, because I thought it would be fun, is we're just going to have a conversation, just like a real conversation, because what I'm hoping is that as chapter leaders, if you decide, hey, let's have a meeting where we're going to talk about inclusion, you'll perhaps listen to this webinar and then begin a conversation amongst yourselves to like enrich the things that we talk about. So we're just going to do it just conversationally. So this is all about utilizing an inclusive mindset to broaden the reach and impact of your alumni engagement efforts. And I typically start these sorts of conversations with, so since we're talking diversity and inclusion, let's first talk about what is that, right? And so, so what is diversity? What is inclusion? Maybe, I'll ask Jason, Molly to kind of tell me what you think diversity is, what you think inclusion is, give an example, and we'll start the conversation from there.
the dance, and inclusion is getting asked to dance. And so you may be able to check the boxes of quote diversity, whether you have alumni of different races or genders or age or all of those things. But at the end of the day, if they don't feel welcome at the table, you're not necessarily being inclusive. So that would be my definition.
I like it. Thank you very
It's
much.
like a home run. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Follow
I
that one up,
I was
Jason.
going to say, I love being Molly's teammate. Yeah, so not perhaps as pretty or nuanced as that. I would just say, in my head, the diversity aspect is just the attributes that make us different, but also make us similar. And not to think about diversity as just differences, but things that we have in commonalities. And so that's a more affirmative way to think about diversity. And then the inclusion is the more action-oriented of that thing, the purposefulness, the intentionality of making sure that that those attributes are taken into consideration and that we are inviting and participatory in that effort.
So that is excellent. I love both of those. And so then if we take a look at both, where we use the party example and we use the intentionality that Jason mentioned, essentially the party might be, just as an example, a watch party, right? And so being intentional about making sure that people feel included to want to come, and then while they're there, have such a great time and feel included, being intentional about that so that they want to come to another event and then eventually maybe volunteer for a committee to further advance the things that the chapter is trying to do. So inclusion becomes such this big thing. And if you think about it, diversity without inclusion is actually exclusion, right? And so that also means that without inclusion, that diversity is going to fall apart. So when Molly says, that you need them, they're not interchangeable. You need them both. That's what that's about. Now, in terms of, so why does it matter, for your chapter goals? So I would assume that each chapter you've taken a look at the goals that you have. You may review that annually or however it is that your process is as a chapter. One of those goals might include, what are our inclusive efforts? What is it that we're trying to do to grow our chapter and therefore be more inclusive? And so, I wonder since we're discussing here, so if you were looking at some of the chapter goals around this sort of thing, Jason, I'll start with you. So what are the sorts of things that you would think a chapter might be thinking about in terms of goals around the inclusion? What sorts of things are you seeing or hearing from?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty common theme is how do we get more people at our events? So it's, and so if that's a question, the foundational thing is how do we include more people? How can we be more inclusive? How can we open our doors wider? How can we make sure that we are leveraging every opportunity to make sure that people are welcome at events? So, if you really expand on we just want more people, you're really talking about a prescription of, well, how can you address that through a inclusivity lens? What kind of things, intentionality can we have to make sure that we can expand our engagement to reach as many people? That's probably the foundational goal of every group is how can we do more, be more, have more participation, and kind of inclusivity is kind of the linchpin of making it happen. How do you make sure that we have a place for every member of the Mizzou family to feel like they're welcome and have an enjoyable experience when they engage with our MAA network?
I agree. I think an easy and simple first step of that is being a good host. It sounds kind of silly, but making sure that you're welcoming people. So I know it's so easy when we're in groups like this. There will be people there that you know as a board member, and you just want to hang out and you're seeing your friends, but you kind of have to view it through a different lens. If this is, if you're taking turns kind of being that lead welcome person to make sure no one's left out, nobody's sitting by themselves, everybody's having a good time, just like you would for a personal event or party too, just making sure that you're making people feel welcome. So, like I said, it's kind of a silly first step, but it really can go a long way, especially with a first timer at one of your events. So,
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, a lot of times when I think about, okay, so when we get together as a you know, our local board, and we're trying to you know, write up our goals for this upcoming year, we want to reach certain levels, maybe capstone, maybe whatever, maybe it's just simply getting folks together. You know, as you're doing these goals, I like to use another sort of metaphor or analogy, because I'm really good at bad analogies. And so, you know, I worked in the insurance industry a really long time, and so that's why this analogy. But if you think about a group of folks in a car that are all the same, they think the same, they see the same things, their life experience have been exactly the same. So as they're driving down the road, they all see the road. They see the road the same way. That means that it is possible that none of them sees that vehicle that's about to T-bone them. But if you have some people in that vehicle who have had some different life experiences, different culturally, you know, just simply life has been different for them, as you conversate within that vehicle, somebody is going to pick up the fact that, oh my goodness, there's a car that's getting ready to T-bone us. So now you can have a conversation about, so what do we do next? Do we slow down? Do we speed up? Do we swerve? A conversation happens. And so as a chapter, as you're figuring out what are our goals, you want to make sure that you have a diversity of thought so that everyone feels included, right? And then you're able to sort of anticipate the growth goals that you really want. And you get more people to buy into it. So that's why the inclusion part is good, and having diversity within that group, have that conversation becomes important too, to help you reach your chapter goals.
I like it. So we're going to be inclusive so we can avoid being T-boned on the highway.
Right.
Got it, you know. Well, Molly also and I have something kind of sweeten the deal here. I really like the way that Titus has positioned kind of some focused purposefulness of thought and planning. This doesn't happen accidentally. And so our challenge to our affiliated organizations is to leverage this as a primer for discussions that you have within your board. If you will take the time to perhaps use this conversation or this webinar with as part of a board meeting or a board discussion, and plan out some specific actions that you would like to take as a board, and kind of report those out to your staff liaison. Then those of you that participate in the columns program, we can record that for you as a credit for essentially being purposeful in planning for a target population. And so that's kind of a category in the columns program that can sometimes be tricky to get, but it's our incentive to you. If you can be planful, I think this will pay dividends for Mizzou and certainly for your organization down the road. So think about how this conversation can apply to your own organization, and what kind of plan of action that you can put in place to be purposeful from an inclusivity standpoint.
and even though that is a box to check off, right? Technically, we don't want diversity and inclusion to be a box that you check off for your board. We want you to be strategic, but because there's an end goal in mind of making your organization stronger, not just because you can check boxes, but because, kind of like Titus was saying, you have different experiences coming to the table to really guide your planning for the year, and really even think about your own personal experiences and how, as a board member, you've brought those to the table and how it's affected the board, and think about how that could go even further if you had tons of different people at the table with you planning for your organization. So
Absolutely. You know, I love this conversational format. I love what we're doing. I'm hoping that it continues the conversation. And in fact, as you are having that conversation, one of the things I would really like to have you consider is having a conversation about what is our culture? What is our culture of inclusivity? And actually like pencil that, right? You know, companies have mission statements, vision statements. So what's your culture statement? All right, come up with that. And that's going to help you to have your framework for inclusivity, which becomes that roadmap to help you grow your chapter, maximize your Mizzou participation.
I love that. What's your culture statement? I don't think I've ever thought about it like that before, but I'm an organization that that would be helpful for us to do.
Very,
Great way to put it.
very good, very good. All right, so any additional thoughts?
I was thinking perhaps Molly and I could kind of share some, perhaps some practical examples of things that you might consider, ways that we could assist or help you with being intentional from an inclusivity standpoint. And one thing that comes to mind is specifically about the composition of the boards that you represent, and perhaps information or prospects that we can help you with. Obviously, it is, you got to kind of think with the end in mind and making sure that we have leadership and volunteerism that reflects the constituency that you want to serve. And so really challenge you to kind of think about your own path to involvement with Mizzou and how and why you're involved and how you can tell that story to recruit and ask for people from different backgrounds and walks of life. You know, I think often Molly and I are not going to be able to cue our respective groups that we work with up with, you know, the very person that would be the next great volunteer leader for you, but we can help kind of narrow down prospects for you if you'd like to reach out to people, if you want to think about, you know, various attributes or aspects of age or veteran status or ethnicity or where they were born in terms of what city or what, you know, just other things that you might have a commonality or an opportunity to reach out and use as a hook to engage fellow alumni and invite their volunteerism or their participation in alumni events, then please lean on your liaisons to think about how we can drill down what honestly are large pools of alumni into kind of some more manageable prospect pools to help you get queued up for those intentional efforts.
I think you can also be intentional in your planning for the year in terms of what kind of events you're having. So having different types of events will draw different types of people. I think we have seen that happen time and again. We have chapters who have what we call kind of more internally, but gold medal society. So 50 plus year grads, honoring them, recognizing them. We have chapters kind of big and small that have done that, and we've seen it work well. Think about how you could network with Mizzou parents. We could help facilitate that. We just had Rocky Mountain Tigers had their Mizzou at Monet event at the Denver Art Museum. So think about how you could utilize the arts in your community. That draws a different crowd than they see at watch parties. So just think about how you can utilize the things going on in your community that don't necessarily have to be Mizzou focused. It's just that you're doing something in your community with fellow Mizzou people. So keep that in mind as you're planning for that coming year as well.
And those are great examples, and your staff liaisons can work with you on more. I think the other important thing to think about with events is not to solely judge it based on the number of people that are at an event or activity. You are building a brand for your organization and for Mizzou with the kinds of things that you do to engage the Mizzou family. And so while, you know, an outing to the zoo or things that may be more family friendly or may not pull as large as something else that's part of your traditional calendar, please know that you're communicating with a constituency, building value, building a brand and an impression that even though perhaps the entire constituency didn't come out for it, while it may not have appealed to me, you have impressed me as a potential attendee with the kinds of variety of things that you're doing to engage you know, the entire Mizzou family. And so know that there's impact from the things you do, even for those that aren't there, but because you communicated and are demonstrating purposefulness with what you're offering from an engagement value proposition.
Very good. Great ideas. Thank you for mentioning about doing a variety of different so that you projects or events or whatever, so that you capture more folks. Wonderful idea. It's something that we did as well. Works. It just works, folks, and people want to feel connected back to the university, to their Mizzou memories, and you help them with that. So that's very cool. So we really appreciate it. This has been a blast for me. And I really appreciate that you guys are tuning in, and I'm looking forward to the conversations that you have. And any questions or anything that you may have for us.
Well, that's perfect, Titus. With that, we certainly appreciate your leadership within our division and your volunteerism on behalf of the Mizzou Alumni Association. We want to thank everyone for participating with us this evening. This webinar has been recorded and it will be added to the library, and so we'll get it posted shortly so that you can share it with fellow volunteers. But with that, we'll wrap for this evening, and appreciate everyone's time, and go Tigers.